This tutorial is basically a crash course on the QRadioButton widget inside PyQt6. Basically, in this video, we're going to explore how we can create radio buttons inside PyQt6, how we can manipulate them, how can we organize them and group them together. Several radio buttons, how do we group them together, how do we use the different functions, how to retrieve their values, find out which one's selected, In this tutorial, we're going to explore how we can use the QRadioButton class. In this tutorial, we're going to explore how we can use the QRadioButton class inside PyQt6. The QRadioButton widget is used to create radio buttons that we can use to present to the user a bunch of options, and then he can select one of them. The key feature, the key distinguishing feature behind a radio button is that when there's a bunch of radio buttons, like 4 or 5, the user can only select one of them. Okay, so it's like mutually exclusive. Unlike the checkbox, for example, where you can select multiple or even none, in the radio buttons you have to select one, just one. Alright, so that's the distinguishing feature behind the radio button. So let's get started with how to create it. Alright, then we'll move on to the different methods available to us in the various signals, and basically we'll try to cover as much as we can regarding this widget in today's video. Alright, so without further ado, let's begin. I'm going to create a simple radio button widget here called radio. Okay, from the QRadioButton class. First parameter is going to be the name of the label that appears next to it. Okay, so this can be something like option 1. Second parameter is going to be the parent self. Alright, and for now I'm just going to use the move operator here and move it somewhere in the middle of the window, but we'll change this approach later on. This is just for the start. Okay, so here is our radio button. Okay, and I can select it here and deselect it. Okay, but this is just one widget, so let's just duplicate this a bunch of times. Okay, and now we have 3. Okay, I'm just going to change the names here a bit. Okay, so we have these 3. I'm going to change their positions a bit just so that there's some spacing, change the text on them. Okay, and yeah, we're done. So I'm going to run this, and now we have 3 radio buttons. Now the interesting thing is that unlike other GUIs that I've worked with, where you need to actually tell the radio buttons that they're a part of each other, like tell the radio buttons that, hey, the 3 of you are interlinked, you're connected to each other. But in PyQt6 you don't have to do that. It's automatic. As long as they have the same parent, they're all belonging to the same group. So for example, if I select option 1 and I select option 2 now, PyQt6 will automatically have these all registered as a group. So option 2 will automatically remove option 1. Okay, by which I mean that if option 1 is selected and you click on option 2, then option 1 will be removed and option 2 will be selected. Okay, that's how this system works. Okay, and just one more thing to note, when there's several radio buttons, clicking on it will not deselect it. Okay, that's just something to keep in mind. Alright, so yeah, this is how you create a bunch of these. Okay, and now before we move on to the various methods and functions that we can use, I just want to upgrade our approach here a bit to something new. Alright, because we don't really use this approach where we move each widget individually. Frankly, that's kind of inefficient and not very effective, so let's change our approach. I'm going to create a group using the QGroupBox. And by the way, this is very open-ended. You can use this widget I'm going to use right now, or you could use a layout. Okay, take any layout and just put it in there. It's going to work perfectly fine. Okay, it's all the same thing really. GroupBox is very similar to a layout. It's just used to group widgets the same way that layouts are. But the slight benefit here is that we get 1 or 2 additional features that will come in handy when grouping together widgets like the radio button. Okay, I'll show you those in a minute. The first parameter here is going to be the label that you want appearing on the widget. Alright, you'll understand that in a minute. Just let me create this. I'll just call it GroupBox. Okay, GroupBox widget for now. And the second parameter is going to be self. Okay, and if I run the code like this, no, sorry, hold on. I needed to actually do this. Okay, but I don't actually like this approach. Yeah, let's just do it the right way from the start. I was going to show you the wrong way first, but that's just kind of lame. let's just go right to the correct method. Okay, so what I'm going to do is import the QVBox layout. Okay, and what I'm going to do is create two layouts. Okay, one main layout that I'm going to create. Okay, this is just good practice. So I'm going to create this main layout over here. Okay, and let's just call it main layout. Okay, and I'm going to set this layout to our window. That's what self.layout does. Okay, we're setting the layout to our window. All right, and okay, now I'm going to create a second layout. All right, and I want this layout to be within the group box widget. Okay, technically it's still inside the window. The group box widget is part of the window, and if the layout is part of the group box widget, it's also part of the window, right, by extension. So that's how the hierarchy kind of works. So I'm going to create this sub layout over here. Okay, or call it whatever, group layout or whatever. So just create this over here, then remove all of these move commands because that's really not efficient. All right, and we're going to add all of these widgets to our sub layout. Okay, and we just pass in the parameters. You can use whichever layout, by the way. It doesn't really matter. It just depends on your preference, obviously, and what kind of layout you're looking, to achieve. So that just depends on you. All right, use the QGrid layout or use the QHbox layout. That's up to you. All right, and just one more thing, we need to do group.setLayout. Okay, and this makes us our layout. Hold on, sub layout. All right, cool. Okay, and just one more thing. Okay, I need to remove this over here, and I need to do main layout dot add widget. Okay, because I haven't, because I don't want the group box widget to be a part of the window anymore, not directly. I want it to be a part of the layout, the main layout that is a part of the window. Okay, so it's the entire hierarchy. You have the main layout, okay, or actually you have the main window, then you have the main layout, then you have the group box widget, then you have the sub widget, sorry, the sub layout, and then you have the three widgets inside of it. So that's how the current hierarchy is. Okay, whoa, too many arguments. What's up with that? Hold on. Set layout. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so let me just remove this too, by the way. That's not necessary anymore. We're not designating the window as the parent anymore. So if I run this code now, so here's the output. We have our group box widget and we have the three radio buttons inside there. Now we have a very cool system setup. It looks nice as well. It's centered because we used the main layout over here. So it centered the group box widget in the middle of the screen. All right. Now I know that was a lot of setup before we actually got to the QRadioButton widget properly, but that's because when you're creating so many widgets, you need to actually keep this in mind. Okay, when you're creating so many radio buttons, the layout matters a lot, and that's why I talked about that first. Okay, and like I'm doing here, I just created one more, and we can very easily set up more in here. Okay, we have a good system going, and now we can add or remove widgets as we please. Okay, that's the benefit of the system that we've created. All right, so let's take a look at how we can actually begin interacting with these radio buttons. Let me just remove one of these here. We don't need that anymore. Okay, because let's just try and reduce the clutter. It'll cause problems later on for this demo video. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is first import the QPush button, or you know what, let's avoid that. Let's skip that step and move directly to the main meat of the matter. What I want to do is trigger a function that tells me which radio button is selected. Okay, which radio button is selected whenever I toggle the buttons. Okay, let's say I toggle a button, I want to find out which radio button is currently selected. One solution to this problem is that we can do radio.toggled. Toggled is a signal. Okay, a signal in PyQt6 is something that signals the occurrence of an event. So for example, we click on the radio button that generates the toggled signal, and the toggled signal can be connected to a function. Okay, and we can create that function down here. Okay, we can call it print, let's call it print details. Okay, and self, of course, and let's just leave that empty for now. Basically, I can connect this signal to our function, self.printDetails. Okay, now this is pretty cool because whenever we click on the radio button, it's going to trigger this signal, which is going to trigger this function. Okay, so let's just do the same for all of our radio buttons. Okay, and there we go. Change names and go. All right, cool. So now what I'm going to do is make this function print out the details of the currently selected radio button. So whenever I click on a radio button, it's basically gonna, call this function which prints out some details. Okay, so you don't need to try and guess which radio button it was. We don't have to do radio 1 dot something or something. We don't need to do that because PyQt6 automatically tells us who called the function. We can do self.sender and this will tell us who was it. Okay, so self.sender, now I'm a bit confused on this part. What did I do again? Self.sender, and it's going to be the functions that we can normally use on the radio button widgets. So if checked, for example, I hope this works. All right, this says, hold on, okay. If I click this, then, oh, great, it works. All right, cool. All right, interesting. Some interesting behavior here. It turns out that, let me just make this a bit more clear. Okay, I'm going to, new line character, does that work? I've never actually tried that. All right, it does. Okay, a wrong effect, kind of. Basically what's going on here, from my observation, that whenever I click on a widget, whenever I click one of these radio buttons, okay, the first time this function is only called once, but the second time it's called twice. The reason for that is because one of them is being toggled off and one of them is being toggled on. Okay, and initially it only prints out once because there's only one thing to be turned on. There's nothing to turn off. Let's just make this a bit more clear. Okay, now the suggestions don't show up properly over here because it's a bit ambiguous as to what could be calling this function. So let me just figure out which functions we can use. Okay, it's kind of a pain to memorize all of them, so I just use the suggestions here. So one function I think is text. Yes, good. All label-based functions, label-based widgets have this function. Okay, now what it does is that it returns the text value, the string value of the label. Okay, so what I can do here is this, and go. All right, so if I do this, you can notice here that it now says option 1 is true, which means option 1 is being turned on. Okay, hold on, let me just resize that and drag it over here. Okay, now I'm going to click option 2 and you can see that option 1 is being turned off and option 2 is being turned on. Okay, I clicked on option 3, option 2 has been turned off and option 3 has been made true. If I click on this again, it doesn't do anything because there's no toggling occurring. Okay, and basically, yeah, I think we understand the main point here. What's going on here? We know what's going on. This is kind of the main point of the video. We've kind of finished it right now. There's just a few more things I want to mention, some extra functions. For example, you can do radio1.setChecked. Okay, you can use this to actually select through code. Okay, through your code you can actually make that radio button selected. Okay, so if I passed in true here, then radio button 1 would be selected. Okay, so if I ran this code now, it would be selected by default. Okay, so if I just did this for radio button 2, okay, so at runtime option 2 is selected. Okay, so that's basically how this function works. Okay, you can use it that instead of the user turning it off and on, you can also do it through code if you wish to. Okay, and other than this, there's also set text, by the way, so you can actually change the text that's currently on it. So I can change this to option 300. Okay, and it's actually going to change that. Alright, so that's another function you can use. There are other functions like this, obviously, that are available to almost every widget, honestly. You can go check those out, and a bunch of stuff, set size, set fixed size. These, take parameters, width and height, so on and so on. There's so many of these. Alright, experiment, try them out, practice, and yeah. So yeah, keep up the practice, and with this we'll end the video. If you guys like this content and want to see more in the future, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you thought, and hopefully I'll see you guys in one of my later PyQt6 tutorials. Alright, I'll be making a lot of them, so stay updated. Alright, see you later.